The silence in the United Earth Diplomatic Court headquarters was absolute. Ambassador Emily Rodriguez stood motionless, her reflection fractured across the holographic displays that painted the chamber with ghosts of destruction. Lunar Colony Alpha, once a gleaming testament to human ambition, now existed only in fragments of burning metal and scattered debris. 17,342 souls, gone in less than 17 minutes. The Zornak strike had been calculated with surgical precision. They had chosen the moment carefully, during the quarterly personnel rotation when the colony's population was at its peak. Each plasma burst, each molecular disruptor blast had been aimed to maximize human casualties while minimizing infrastructure damage. They wanted to make a statement. They wanted to break humanity's spirit. They had no idea what they were truly facing. Rodriguez's fingers traced a thin scar along her left hand, a remnant from her military service decades earlier. The wound had never fully healed, a constant reminder of humanity's capacity to endure. Her dark eyes, trained in diplomatic negotiations but forged in military conflict, scanned the holographic data streams. Every pixel told a story of calculated destruction. The initial reports had been clinical. Catastrophic infrastructure failure, significant human loss, colonial breach, bureaucratic language that attempted to sanitize the raw horror of what had occurred. But Rodriguez saw beyond the sanitized language. She saw the human cost. Personal logs recovered from the colony's emergency data cores told a different story. Fragments of final messages. A mother's last communication to her child stationed on Earth. A research team's desperate attempt to save critical scientific data. A security officer's final transmission coordinating evacuation protocols. Maintain calm. Protect the data. Save who you can. Such simple words, such extraordinary resolve. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy. Representatives from 63 different species watched her, their various appendages and sensory organs focused on this single human woman. Most expected tears. Some anticipated rage. A few hoped for capitulation. They would be disappointed. Rodriguez's communication implant, a sophisticated biomural interface developed by the most advanced human research teams, processed information at speeds that would make most alien computational systems seem archaic. Multiple data streams converged in her consciousness: casualty reports, strategic analyses, potential response scenarios. Behind her, a classified map of human-controlled space flickered. Red markers indicated lunar colonies. Blue markers showed defensive platforms. Green indicators represented research stations. The map told a story of strategic complexity that most alien civilizations couldn't comprehend. Humanity wasn't just a young species struggling to survive. They were architects of their own destiny. The Zornak had studied human history. They understood humanity's conflicts, its wars, its technological progressions. They believed they had calculated every possible response. They had analyzed human reactions to previous cosmic threats. They thought they knew humanity. They were catastrophically wrong. What the Zornak didn't understand was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology. It wasn't their adaptability. It wasn't even their remarkable capacity for innovation. Their true power lay in their response to violation. Humans did not break. They transformed. Every species in the galaxy had a breaking point, a moment where they would surrender, negotiate, or simply fade away. The Zornak believed they had found humanity's breaking point. They had calculated that the destruction of the lunar colonies would demonstrate human vulnerability. Instead, they had lit a fire. Ambassador Rodriguez's hand moved almost imperceptibly. Quantum encrypted signals began to cascade through human communication networks. Backup protocols, dormant for years, began to activate. Research facilities that appeared independent and isolated suddenly displayed a complex, interconnected intelligence. The first response was already in motion. Her lips moved, forming words that would echo through human and alien history. Our world was violated. The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient technological hum seemed to pause. And then, with a calm that felt more terrifying than any scream, she completed the sentence that would define humanity's response. But violation implies vulnerability. We are not vulnerable. We are unavenged. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountain Research Complex, Dr. Jack Thompson moved with a deliberate calm that belied the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The Prometheus Protocol was more than a contingency plan. It was humanity's insurance policy against extinction, a multi-layered defense and response system decades in the making. Rows of quantum processing units hummed with a subdued energy, their crystalline structures holding computational power that would make most alien technologies look like children's abacuses. Each unit was a node in a network so complex, so meticulously designed, that it defied traditional understanding of information processing. Thompson's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, triggering protocols that had been waiting in silent preparation. The lunar colony attack wasn't just a tragedy. It was the trigger that would reveal humanity's true potential. The first layer of the Prometheus Protocol was deceptively simple: information. Not just data collection, but a comprehensive understanding that went beyond traditional intelligence gathering. Human research facilities scattered across Earth, Mars, and deep space research stations were never truly independent. They were interconnected neurons in a global intelligence network. Scientific outposts that appeared to be studying mundane planetary phenomena were actually advanced monitoring stations. Telescopes that seemed focused on distant galaxies were capturing quantum-level information about potential threats. Marine research platforms in Earth's oceans were sophisticated sensor arrays disguised as environmental research centers. Each facility, each research station, each seemingly mundane technological installation was a piece of a much larger puzzle. The Zornak believed they understood human technological capabilities. They had studied human development, analyzed our wars, our scientific progressions. They thought they knew the limits of human innovation. Their fatal mistake was believing that limits actually existed. Thompson activated the second layer of the protocol. Quantum communication nodes, previously dormant, began to synchronize. These were not standard communication networks. They were adaptive, self-healing systems that could reconfigure themselves faster than any external intelligence could track. Hidden within common satellite networks were extremely sophisticated AI systems, not the simplistic artificial intelligences that most galactic civilizations understood, but complex neural networks that could learn, adapt, and strategize at speeds that defied comprehension. The marine research platform off the coast of Chile was no longer just monitoring ocean currents. Its advanced sensors began to track and analyze Zornak communication frequencies. In the research station beneath the Atacama Desert, quantum computers started decrypting communication protocols that the Zornak believed were unbreakable. Each system was a weapon. Each research facility was a strategic point. Humanity had been preparing, not just for this moment, but for any potential existential threat. Thompson's personal history made him uniquely suited to oversee the Prometheus Protocol. A veteran of multiple conflict resolution missions, he understood something profound about human potential. Humans didn't just adapt. They transformed. His grandmother had survived 3 wars. His parents had helped rebuild critical infrastructure after global climate disasters. Each generation of his family had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges and emerged stronger. This was more than a genetic memory. It was a species-wide characteristic. The third layer of the protocol began to activate. Advanced nanotechnology that had been developed under the guise of medical research started to mobilize. Microscopic systems designed to repair human bodies could be rapidly reconfigured into something far more sophisticated. Defensive systems that appeared to be experimental medical technologies were actually advanced adaptive armor prototypes. Research into human neural interfaces had produced communication technologies that could penetrate any known encryption. A series of quantum entanglement communication relays came online. These were not traditional communication systems. They could transmit information instantaneously across vast distances, creating a network that was invisible, uninterceptable, and completely adaptive. Dr. Thompson allowed himself a slight smile. The Zornak thought they had struck a decisive blow by destroying the lunar colonies. They had no idea they had just activated humanity's most sophisticated response mechanism. The Prometheus protocol was now fully engaged, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first strike was silent. Completely, utterly silent. Financial systems across Zornak-controlled space began to dissolve like frost under a morning sun. It started with the Central Galactic Exchange, a massive interconnected network that managed economic transactions for 17 different star systems. One moment, the system was operational. The next, it was a cascade of digital chaos. Stock values plummeted. Credit systems collapsed. Entire planetary economies began to hemorrhage resources with no clear point of origin. The attacks weren't just precise. They were surgical, leaving no trace of traditional cyber warfare markers. In the United Earth Cybersecurity Command Center, a team of specialized operators worked with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Led by Maria Rodriguez, a distant cousin of the diplomatic corps ambassador, the team moved through digital landscapes like ghosts, their quantum-encrypted interfaces allowing them to manipulate systems at a level most species couldn't comprehend. Each operator was more than just a technician. They were digital warriors, trained in a specialized program that merged advanced computational skills with strategic thinking. Their training went far beyond traditional computer science. They understood systems, not just technological systems, but economic, social, and biological networks. The Zornak had made a critical miscalculation. They believed their attack on the lunar colonies would be a decisive blow. Instead, they had awakened a response mechanism that would redefine interstellar conflict. Communication networks began to fragment. What appeared to be random disruptions were actually carefully designed attacks that exposed the fundamental vulnerabilities in Zornak infrastructure. Research stations that seemed to be conducting routine scientific observations were actually advanced infiltration points, each one a potential gateway into the most secure Zornak systems. Dr. Jack Thompson watched from the Prometheus Protocol Command Center, his fingers tracing holographic data streams. The initial response was working perfectly. Humanity wasn't just retaliating. They were conducting a comprehensive systemic analysis and dismantling of Zornak capabilities. Trade routes became labyrinths of misinformation. Shipping lanes that had been reliable for centuries suddenly became unpredictable. Navigation systems developed inexplicable errors. Quantum communication relays began to produce garbled, nonsensical transmissions that drove Zornak communication specialists to the brink of madness. It wasn't just about causing damage. It was about creating uncertainty. Ambassador Emily Rodriguez understood this better than anyone. Her diplomatic training had taught her that true power wasn't about destruction. It was about control, about demonstrating capabilities without fully revealing them. In the Galactic Council chambers, she stood with a calm that felt more terrifying than any military posturing. Her statement would become legendary. Our world was violated. But violation implies vulnerability. We are not vulnerable. We are unavenged. The words hung in the air, a promise and a threat. The economic attack was just the first layer. Beneath the surface, more sophisticated systems were coming online. Research facilities that appeared independent began to show a complex, interconnected intelligence. What looked like random data fluctuations were actually sophisticated information warfare techniques. Zornak military communication channels began to experience unexplained disruptions. Tactical networks that had been considered impenetrable started to show hairline fractures. Each breach was carefully designed, not to completely destroy, but to create doubt, to make the Zornak question every system, every communication, every strategic assumption. Maria Rodriguez's team continued their work, each movement calculated and precise. They weren't just responding to the lunar colony attack. They were rewriting the rules of interstellar conflict. The most terrifying aspect of humanity's response wasn't its technological sophistication. It was the complete calm with which it was being executed. No panic, no rage-driven retaliation, just a methodical, almost surgical dismantling of an entire civilization's infrastructure. By the end of the first 72 hours, the Zornak would realize they had made a catastrophic mistake. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated. They were not a civilization to be violated. They were something else entirely. A transformative force that would reshape the very understanding of conflict in the galaxy. The experimental research facility in the Nevada desert looked unremarkable from the outside. A simple complex of low-rise buildings surrounded by desert and security checkpoints. But beneath the unassuming exterior lay humanity's most advanced technological development center, a place where the boundaries of physics were not just tested, but fundamentally rewritten. Dr. Alexandra Chen stood before a holographic display that shimmered with possibilities. The molecular reconfiguration weapon was more than just a technological achievement. It was a complete reimagining of matter manipulation. Traditional weapons destroyed. This created and destroyed simultaneously. Each prototype represented years of research that had been hidden from galactic observation. Humanity had been studying alien technologies not to copy them, but to understand them at a fundamental level, and then to transcend them completely. The quantum drive prototypes defied everything known about space-time manipulation. Where other civilizations saw limitations, human researchers saw challenges to be overcome. These weren't just faster-than-light travel systems. They were fundamental restructurings of spatial movement. Jack Thompson walked through the research facility, each step accompanied by the subtle hum of advanced computational systems. The bioadaptive armor hanging in the development chamber was nothing like the mechanical suits used by other galactic civilizations. These were living systems that responded faster than biological reflexes could comprehend. Nanomeural interfaces woven into molecular structures could analyze, adapt, and respond to threats in microseconds. The armor wasn't just protective. It was predictive. It could anticipate potential damage vectors and restructure itself before an attack even materialized. The first human strike team was being assembled, not from traditional military stock, but from a carefully selected group of interdisciplinary experts. Each member was more than a soldier. They were walking technological platforms, each one a comprehensive system of human innovation. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the facility's ambient noise. Molecular reconfiguration is ready for field testing. The weapon was a marvel of human ingenuity. It didn't just destroy matter. It could fundamentally reconstruct it at the atomic level. Entire defensive structures could be transformed into inert materials in milliseconds. Spacecraft could be dismantled without a single explosion, their component atoms carefully rearranged. Thompson reviewed the final mission parameters. The strike team would be more than a military unit. They would be a comprehensive technological demonstration, a message to the Zornak and the entire galactic community. The quantum communication systems integrated into the team's equipment were revolutionary. They could transmit information across impossible distances, creating a communication network that was invisible, uninterceptable, and completely adaptive. Each team member carried multiple technological systems that would have been considered science fiction by most galactic standards. Neural interfaces that could process information at speeds that made most computational systems seem archaic. Adaptive camouflage systems that could alter molecular structures to blend perfectly with any environment. The bioadaptive armor was the true marvel, developed through years of research into human physiological responses, medical nanotechnology, and quantum computational systems. It was a living system that was part technology, part organism. When the first human strike team appeared in Zornak space, they did more than attack. They performed a symphonic destruction that was equal parts military precision and technological artistry. They moved like ghosts. Quantum displacement systems allowed them to appear and disappear at will. Molecular reconfiguration weapons turned defensive installations into dust. Communication systems were infiltrated and dismantled before the Zornak could even comprehend what was happening. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a comprehensive technological demonstration. Dr. Chen watched the initial mission reports stream in. Each data point was a validation of years of hidden research. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were redefining the very concept of technological warfare. The Zornak had believed they understood human capabilities. They had studied human technological progression. They had analyzed our conflicts, our innovations. They were catastrophically wrong. This was more than a counterattack. This was a complete redefinition of what was possible. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were anything but vulnerable. Psychological warfare was an art form that humanity had perfected over millennia of complex human conflicts. The Zornak understood technological warfare. They comprehended strategic military operations, but they had never encountered a species that could weaponize uncertainty itself. The infiltration began with something seemingly innocuous: communication. Dr. Elena Ramirez, head of the Advanced Psychological Warfare Division, understood that true conflict happened long before the first shot was fired. Her team wasn't composed of traditional military strategists. They were linguists, psychologists, cultural analysts, and computational experts who understood the deepest mechanisms of communication and perception. Each communication intercept was carefully designed, not to gather information, but to create doubt. Zornak military channels began to experience subtle, almost imperceptible disruptions. Tactical communications would carry fragments of information that seemed correct but contained microscopic inconsistencies. Navigation systems would show routes that were 99.8% accurate, with tiny errors that would drive their navigators to paranoid exhaustion. Military installations reported strange occurrences. Communication logs would show conversations that never happened. Tactical simulations would produce results that were just different enough from expected outcomes to create profound psychological strain. The human strategy wasn't about destroying the Zornak infrastructure. It was about making them question every single aspect of their technological and communication systems. In the Zornak Central Military Command, senior officers began to experience mounting stress. Their most secure communication networks showed unexplained penetrations, not complete breaches, just enough to make them question everything. Quantum communication relays would transmit messages that were perfectly encrypted but carried subtle emotional undertones. Messages that seemed completely rational but contained almost imperceptible psychological triggers designed to induce doubt and anxiety. Jack Thompson watched the psychological warfare unfold from the Prometheus Protocol Command Center. Each action was calculated with surgical precision. They weren't just attacking a civilization. They were systematically dismantling its sense of psychological security. The first wave of infiltration targeted the Zornak's most critical asset: their belief in technological superiority. Research facilities that appeared to be routine monitoring stations began to produce data that was just slightly off. Navigation systems would show routes that were mathematically correct but strategically impossible. Communication networks would carry conversations that seemed real but contained microscopic inconsistencies that would drive their analysts to the brink of madness. Dr. Ramirez's team had studied Zornak psychology for decades. They understood the species' fundamental psychological triggers. The Zornak valued precision above all else. Their entire civilization was built on the concept of mathematical perfection and technological certainty. Humanity would use that against them. Military installations were infiltrated without a single human casualty, but the infiltration wasn't about physical destruction. It was about creating a profound sense of psychological vulnerability. Zornak commanders would receive tactical reports that were 99.9% accurate, but that 0.1% would be enough to create paralyzing doubt. Their most secure communication networks would show penetrations that defied their understanding of cybersecurity. The psychological warfare went beyond traditional military strategies. It was a comprehensive assault on the Zornak's fundamental understanding of technological superiority. Communication intercepts revealed a growing madness within Zornak leadership. Her most brilliant analysts were being driven to nervous breakdowns by communication systems that seemed to defy rational explanation. They were no longer dealing with a species they could understand or predict. Humanity had become something else entirely, a force of strategic and psychological complexity that rewrote the rules of engagement. Each intercepted communication, each subtle manipulation was a weapon more powerful than any physical strike. The Zornak were being taught a fundamental lesson about human capabilities. Humanity didn't just fight. They transformed conflict into an art form of psychological complexity. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber fell into an unprecedented silence as the holographic displays began to show the comprehensive collapse of Zornak infrastructure. Dr. Jack Thompson stood before the assembled representatives, his presentation a masterpiece of strategic revelation. This wasn't just a military briefing. It was a fundamental restructuring of galactic understanding about human capabilities. Each holographic slide peeled back layers of the Zornak civilization's vulnerabilities. What had seemed like an impossible counterattack was actually a meticulously planned, systematic deconstruction. The lunar colony attack hadn't been a moment of human weakness. It had been a trigger, carefully anticipated and prepared for. Representatives from 63 different species watched in stunned silence. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others seemed to be struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. Thompson's presentation revealed the true depth of human preparation. The Zornak hadn't just been defeated. They had been comprehensively analyzed, understood, and strategically nullified. Economic systems showed complete destabilization. Military communication networks were in total disarray. Research facilities that had been the pride of Zornak technological superiority were now revealed as fundamentally compromised. The strategy went far beyond traditional military doctrine. Humanity had developed a comprehensive approach that targeted every single aspect of Zornak civilization. It wasn't about destruction. It was about complete strategic nullification. Dr. Elena Ramirez stood beside Thompson, her psychological warfare analysis painting an even more disturbing picture. The human response wasn't just a counterattack. It was a complete reimagining of conflict resolution. The Zornak believed they understood human potential, Ramirez explained, her voice calm and precise. They studied our conflicts. They analyzed our technological progressions. They thought they had calculated every possible response. A holographic display showed the intricate web of psychological manipulations that had been deployed. Each communication intercept, each strategic infiltration, was a carefully designed psychological weapon. Other alien species began to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity was not just another emerging civilization. They were a transformative force that could fundamentally alter the galactic landscape with nothing more than intelligence, preparation, and an absolutely ruthless commitment to protecting their own. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had always believed in a certain predictability of emerging species. They had developed comprehensive models of technological and social development. Humanity was rewriting those models in real time. Thompson's final slide was deceptively simple, a comprehensive breakdown of how the entire Zornak counterintelligence system had been systematically dismantled. Not through brute force, but through a level of strategic complexity that defied traditional understanding. We didn't just defeat the Zornak, Thompson explained. We demonstrated a fundamental truth about human potential. The Zornak representative, a scaled reptilian creature whose species had dominated multiple star systems for millennia, sat motionless. The holographic displays reflected in its cold, unblinking eyes showed the complete dismantling of everything its civilization had believed about itself. This was more than a military defeat. This was a comprehensive demonstration of human capabilities. Ambassador Emily Rodriguez, who had been silent until this moment, stepped forward. Her presence was more powerful than any weapon. Years of diplomatic training combined with a deep understanding of strategic complexity. The lunar colony attack was not our weakness, she stated. Her words carried a weight that seemed to reshape the very atmosphere of the council chamber. It was an opportunity. The other species began to understand. Humanity hadn't just responded to an attack. They had transformed a moment of potential destruction into a comprehensive demonstration of their true potential. The Zornak had believed they were striking a decisive blow. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A species that did not just adapt, a species that transformed. As the presentation concluded, the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The rules of interstellar conflict had just been completely rewritten. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were anything but vulnerable. The negotiation chamber was unlike any diplomatic space in galactic history. Designed by human architects, it was a masterpiece of psychological and architectural engineering. The room itself was a statement: transparent walls that allowed full visibility, adaptive surfaces that could change contextual information in real time, and acoustic properties that made every word precise and impactful. Ambassador Emily Rodriguez sat at the center of the negotiation table, her posture a perfect balance of diplomatic composure and underlying strength. Surrounding her were representatives from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, along with the defeated Zornak leadership. This wasn't just a negotiation. It was a comprehensive restructuring of interstellar protocols. Dr. Jack Thompson and Dr. Elena Ramirez flanked Rodriguez, each representing different aspects of humanity's comprehensive approach. Thompson embodied technological innovation. Ramirez represented psychological strategy. Rodriguez was the diplomatic architect who would reshape galactic interactions. The Zornak delegation arrived broken, not physically, but systemically. Their entire civilization had been comprehensively dismantled not through traditional warfare, but through a level of strategic complexity that defied their understanding. "We are not here to destroy," Rodriguez began, her voice carrying a calm that felt more powerful than any threat. "We are here to restructure." The first clause of the proposed galactic protocols was revolutionary. It wasn't about punishment. It was about creating a fundamental framework that would prevent future conflicts through comprehensive understanding. Dr. Ramirez's psychological analysis had revealed something profound about interstellar conflicts. Most were rooted in misunderstanding, resource competition, and fundamental communication failures. The new protocols would address these root causes. Technological exchange would be mandatory, not as a form of surrender, but as a collaborative process. Every civilization would be required to share basic technological principles, creating a transparent framework that would reduce potential conflicts. The Zornak representative, a scaled creature whose entire body language spoke of defeated pride, attempted to interrupt. Rodriguez's subtle hand gesture stopped them mid-sentence. It was a movement so precise, so calculated that it demonstrated humanity's complete control of the situation. "Your attack on our lunar colonies was not just an act of aggression," Rodriguez explained. "It was a fundamental misunderstanding of human potential." The proposed protocols went far beyond traditional diplomatic agreements. They created a comprehensive framework for technological, cultural, and strategic transparency. Every civilization would be required to maintain open communication channels. Technological developments would be shared. Cultural understanding would be mandatory. Thompson presented the technological components of the new framework: advanced communication systems that would create unprecedented levels of interstellar understanding, quantum communication relays that would make miscommunication virtually impossible. The most radical proposal was a mandatory cross-cultural education program. Young representatives from each civilization would be required to spend significant time understanding the cultural, technological, and social frameworks of other species. "Conflict emerges from ignorance," Rodriguez stated. "Understanding is our most powerful weapon." The Galactic Council representatives watched in stunned silence. What was happening was more than a negotiation. It was a fundamental restructuring of interstellar interactions. Dr. Ramirez's psychological models had demonstrated that true peace wasn't about military might. It was about creating systemic understanding. The new protocols would implement comprehensive communication frameworks that would make traditional conflicts obsolete. The Zornak could only watch as humanity demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that went beyond military confrontation. They were reshaping the very foundations of galactic civilization. Economic systems would be restructured. Technological exchanges would be mandatory. Cultural understanding would become a fundamental requirement for interstellar interactions. Ambassador Rodriguez's final statement would become legendary. "We do not seek to conquer. We seek to understand. And in understanding, we create a framework for collective evolution." The negotiation wasn't just about the Zornak. It was about creating a new paradigm for galactic civilization. Humanity had transformed a moment of potential destruction into an opportunity for comprehensive transformation. As the negotiations concluded, it became clear that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as architects of a new interstellar understanding. 5 years after the Zornak conflict, the lunar colonies rose again, not as mere research outposts, but as monuments to human resilience and innovation. Where destruction had once reigned, now stood the most advanced interstellar research and diplomatic complex in known space. Dr. Jack Thompson stood on the observation deck, watching construction crews work with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. The rebuilt lunar facilities were more than just a technical achievement. They were a statement about human potential. Each module told a story of transformation. Advanced research centers that could simultaneously study multiple scientific disciplines, diplomatic training facilities that brought together young representatives from across the galaxy, medical research stations that were pushing the boundaries of interspecies healthcare and understanding. Ambassador Emily Rodriguez's approach, her steps measured and deliberate. The diplomatic landscape had been completely transformed, and she had been the primary architect of this new reality. They thought violation meant weakness, she said, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had experienced. They were wrong. The Galactic Collaborative Research Initiative, established in the aftermath of the Zornak conflict, had become the most significant scientific and diplomatic platform in known space. Young researchers from 63 different civilizations worked side by side, breaking down barriers that had existed for millennia. Dr. Elena Ramirez's psychological integration protocols had become the standard for interspecies communication. What had once been seen as an experimental approach was now fundamental to galactic diplomacy. The protocols went beyond simple translation. They created deep, meaningful understanding between vastly different species. Thompson reviewed the latest research reports. Technological exchanges that were once unimaginable were now routine. Quantum communication systems developed through collaborative research had transformed interstellar communication. Navigation technologies shared between species had expanded exploration capabilities exponentially. The lunar complex was a microcosm of this new approach. Research modules that seemed to defy traditional scientific boundaries. Collaborative spaces where species that had once been mortal enemies now worked together on solving fundamental universal challenges. A group of young researchers walked past. A human, a crystalline being from the Nexus clusters, and a methane-breathing researcher from the deep space colonies of the Krull Confederation. Their casual conversation about quantum entanglement research would have been impossible just 5 years earlier. The Zornak, once a conquering civilization, were now integral partners in this new collaborative framework. Not as a defeated species, but as participants in a broader understanding of collective potential. Rodriguez's diplomatic framework had fundamentally transformed how civilizations interacted. The mandatory cross-cultural education programs had created a generation of researchers and diplomats who saw beyond species boundaries. Conflict was no longer seen as an inevitability, but as a failure of understanding. Thompson watched a new quantum research module come online. It represented years of collaborative research, technologies developed not by a single species, but by a collective of different civilizations working together. The most profound transformation wasn't technological, it was philosophical. Humanity had shown that true strength wasn't about military might or technological superiority. It was about the capacity to understand, to adapt, and to create collective potential. The lunar colony stood as a testament to this new understanding. Where once there had been destruction, now there was a beacon of collaborative potential. Research facilities that pushed the boundaries of scientific understanding. Diplomatic training centers that created a new generation of interstellar communicators. Dr. Ramirez's latest psychological integration report sat on Thompson's desk. It detailed how the collaborative approach had fundamentally reduced interspecies tensions. Conflict resolution mechanisms that were once theoretical were now standard practice. Rodriguez joined Thompson at the observation deck. They watched as a new research vessel, a collaborative design from 5 different civilizations, prepared for launch. "We didn't just rebuild," Rodriguez said quietly. "We reimagined." The vessel represented more than a technological achievement. It was a symbol of everything they had fought for, a testament to the idea that understanding was the most powerful force in the universe. The lunar colonies glowed against the stark background of space, a monument to human potential, to resilience, to the profound belief that transformation was always possible. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as architects of a new universal understanding.